Just keep the books organized. That's all you're really good for." That's what my father said to me at our family dinner as he passed the business ledger across the table, not even looking up from his phone. I wasn't asking for praise. I wasn't seeking attention. I was simply sharing news about the small tech grant I'd received for my environmental startup idea. But in the Chen family, unless it involved real estate commissions or traditional business, metrics, accomplishments might as well be invisible. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I still remember the weight of that leather-bound ledger in my hands, how it felt both familiar and suffocating. The Chen family business had been my assigned destiny since before I could form complete sentences. "Olivia will handle the administrative side," they'd say at family gatherings, as if organizing spreadsheets was the ceiling of my potential, not the floor. Growing up in Boston's Beacon Hill neighborhood, our family embodied success by every conventional measure. My father, Michael, built one of the city's premier real estate brokerages from the ground up. My mother, Grace, transformed luxury properties with her interior design skills. My older brother, Brandon, was already making waves on Wall Street by 25. Even my younger sister, Elise, had somehow amassed 250,000 followers documenting her perfectly curated college lifestyle. Then there was me, Olivia Chen. Quiet, analytical, perpetually hunched over textbooks about environmental science and sustainable technology. The family puzzle piece that never quite fit. "What exactly is this grant for again?" my mother asked, her voice heavy with that particular tone she reserved for conversations she found tedious. She was redecorating the dining room for the third time that year, measuring the wall behind me as we spoke. "It's seed funding for my waste reduction algorithm, the one that helps companies identify where their recycling systems are failing, and how to optimize—" she interrupted, marking something on her design pad. "Sounds very niche." Brandon laughed, swirling his expensive bourbon. "Liv's always been into her little projects. Remember that ridiculous compost system she built in the garage? Dad nearly had a heart attack when clients came by. It won the state science fair," I said quietly. "And ruined Mom's Louboutins," Elise chimed in without looking up from her phone. She was probably already drafting an Instagram story about our family business dinner that would somehow exclude me from the frame. My father finally set his phone down. "Look, Olivia, this hobby of yours is fine as a side interest, but at some point, you need to get serious about your future. The Chen Group has a position waiting for you. Security, family legacy, real impact." Real impact. That phrase haunted me, as if helping corporations purchase their third vacation property somehow outweighed developing technology to address environmental waste. I looked around the table, at my father's dismissive gaze, my mother's distracted measurements, Brandon's smirk, Elise's carefully angled selfie pose, and realized I'd spent 26 years trying to earn a seat at a table that had never been set for me. "I think my grant project has real impact," I said, louder than I intended. The table fell silent. Then my father sighed that particular sigh, the one that communicated disappointment without requiring actual words. "Olivia, we've invested good money in your education so you could contribute meaningfully to this family. Your environmental, whatever. It's not practical. It's not profitable. It's not what Chens do." I felt something shift inside me. Not anger exactly, something steadier, more certain. "Maybe it's not what Chens have done before," I said, carefully closing the ledger. "But it's what this Chen is going to do." My father's expression hardened. "This family built everything from nothing. Your grandfather came to this country with $10 in his pocket. And now you want to throw away generations of achievement for some tree-hugging pipe dream that will never amount to anything?" Elise snickered. Brandon shook his head with theatrical disappointment. My mother simply continued measuring, as if I'd already faded from the scene. "I'm moving to Seattle next month," I said. The words surprised even me. I'd been considering researching opportunities in the tech ecosystem there, but hadn't fully committed until that very moment. "What?" My father's voice sharpened. "I've been offered workspace in a tech incubator. The grant covers my basic expenses for 6 months. I'm going." "Don't be ridiculous." My mother finally looked up. "What about the Chen Group expansion? Your father's been planning your role for years." "I never agreed to that role." My father pushed his chair back. "This is absurd. You have responsibilities here, family obligations, a path." "A path you chose for me," I said, rising slowly. "I'm choosing my own now," Brandon scoffed. "With what experience? What connections? What capital? You think some little recycling app is going to compete with actual businesses?" I looked at him steadily. "I guess we'll find out." "You'll be back in 6 months," my father said, his voice flat with certainty. "When this fantasy collapses, don't expect us to fund another one. There's a difference between dreamers and doers, Olivia. This family is built on doing." I didn't slam doors, didn't raise my voice, didn't make dramatic declarations. I simply nodded, excused myself from the table, and walked upstairs to the bedroom that had never fully felt like mine despite the 26 years I'd spent in it. That night, I made 3 lists: what to pack, what to sell, what to leave behind. By morning, I had booked a one-way ticket to Seattle, departing in 2 weeks. When I told Sophia, my college roommate and only real friend who'd stuck around after graduation, she immediately offered to help. "Are you sure about this, Liv?" she asked as we boxed up my modest collection of belongings. "It's not that I don't believe in you. I absolutely do. But your family." "My family sees exactly what they want to see," I said, carefully wrapping my environmental science awards in newspaper, awards that had never found space on the crowded Chen family achievement wall. "And I'm tired of contorting myself to fit that vision." Sophia nodded, understanding in her eyes. She had been there through 4 years of strained holiday visits and obligatory family functions where my contributions were footnotes at best. "You know, some families just can't recognize certain kinds of brilliance." I smiled at that. Brilliance wasn't a word anyone had ever associated with me. Reliable, organized, practical, but never brilliant. The day before my flight, my father called me into his study, the inner sanctum of Chen ambition, with its dark wood paneling and wall of business achievements. "I've been thinking about your situation," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I'm prepared to offer you a compromise." He slid a folder across his desk. Inside was a contract for a position at the Chen Group, Sustainability Coordinator. The salary was generous, the role, on paper, aligned with my interests. "You can pursue your environmental interest within the structure of our established business," he said, already reaching for his Mont Blanc pen. A win-win. I skimmed the document, noting the reporting structure, directly to Brandon, the geographical restriction, must be based in Boston office, and the intellectual property clause. All innovations developed would belong to the Chen Group. "This isn't a compromise," I said, closing the folder. "It's containment." My father's expression tightened. "It's opportunity, security, family support." "It's control," I countered, my voice steadier than I felt. "And I don't need a new cage, even if it's larger than the old one." His face flushed. "You're making a terrible mistake. This environmental fantasy, it will fail. You will fail. And when you do, don't come looking for a bailout." I stood, oddly calm despite the finality of the moment. "I'm not afraid of failure, Dad. I'm afraid of never trying. Of looking back at 80 and wondering what might have been if I'd trusted myself just once." "Trust requires evidence," he said coldly. "And you've given us none that this path leads anywhere but disappointment." I left his study without responding. What could I say to someone who had defined success so narrowly that innovation itself was suspect? Who measured worth in square footage and client portfolios? The next morning, no one drove me to the airport. No emotional goodbyes disrupted the Chen household routine. My mother left a check on my bed, for emergencies only, with a note. That read simply, "Don't embarrass the family name." I took the check but left the note on my perfectly made bed. Seattle greeted me with rain and possibilities. The tech incubator space was nothing like the gleaming Chen Group headquarters, just a renovated warehouse with communal desks, mismatched furniture, and walls covered in whiteboards filled with coding languages and flowcharts. But it hummed, with an energy I'd never felt in my father's carefully controlled business environments. My first 6 months were a blur of 18-hour days, instant ramen dinners, and endless prototype iterations. I named my company Envirotech Solutions, focusing on AI-powered waste reduction systems that could transform how businesses handled their environmental impact. The grant money stretched thin, and I supplemented by consulting on the side, often working until my vision blurred. The Chen family checked in sporadically, their messages always tinged with expectation of failure. "How's the recycling app going?" Brandon would text, the dismissive tone somehow translating through the screen. "Have you considered graduate school as a backup?" my mother would suggest during our brief monthly calls. My father said nothing directly. Instead, he communicated through pointed emails about Chen Group successes, new property acquisitions, and Brandon's rapid ascent to partner status, each message an implicit comparison. I was failing. I didn't respond to the bait, didn't defend my progress, didn't share the small victories. Our first successful algorithm deployment, positive feedback from beta testers, interest from a small angel investor. I was learning that some journeys require privacy to take root. Then came what I later termed the unraveling, the week everything nearly collapsed. Our main server crashed, erasing 3 months of development work. Our largest beta client pulled out. The angel investor got cold feet. And my landlord raised the rent beyond what I could possibly afford. I sat alone in the incubator space at 2 a.m., surrounded by whiteboards filled with problems lacking solutions, when my phone buzzed with a text from Elise. "Dad's giving Brandon control of the East Coast expansion. Your office would have been the corner one. Still time to come to your senses." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I stared at that message for a long time, feeling the weight of expectation and the pull of security. The Chen safety net was still there, conditional, judgmental, but there. All I had to do was admit defeat. My finger hovered over the phone. Then, instead of responding to Elise, I found myself calling a number I'd collected months ago but never used. "Jason Kim," answered a voice, surprisingly alert despite the late hour. "This is Olivia Chen from Envirotech. We met at the sustainability conference." "I know it's late, but the waste reduction system," he interrupted. "I remember. You wouldn't let me invest because my fund had ties to the petroleum industry." I winced. That might have been principled to a fault. He laughed, a genuine sound that cut through my despair. "It was refreshing. Everyone else was chasing money regardless of ethics. You actually cared what your technology would be used for." "I still do," I said, "but I'm facing some challenges." "Perfect," Jason said, to my surprise. "The interesting stuff always happens when things fall apart. Tell me everything. Don't sugarcoat it." So I did, laying out every failure, every setback, every moment of doubt. The server crash, the vanished investor, the dwindling bank account. When I finished, I expected the usual response, sympathetic but ultimately dismissive. The same look my family had perfected. Instead, Jason said, "I can be there tomorrow morning with my technical team. Your approach to the municipal waste calculation is something we've been watching. It's not just innovative, it's transformative. And now that you're no longer allergic to my investment fund, I've become more pragmatic, I admitted. No, he countered. You've become battle-tested. There's a difference. He paused. Olivia, failing experiments aren't failures. They're data. And from what you've just described, you've got enough data to solve problems no one else is even identifying. Yet, 24 hours later, Jason arrived with 2 engineers and a contract offering $1. $5 million in seed funding for a 15% stake in Envirotech Solutions. The terms were fair. The technical support was invaluable. But most importantly, the validation was transformative. For the first time in my professional life, someone saw value in exactly what I was building, not what they wished I was building instead. I didn't call my family with the news, didn't seek their approval or acknowledgement. Their voices had occupied enough space in my head. I wouldn't invite them into this fragile moment of possibility. Instead, I signed the contract, hired Sophia as my operations director, and moved Envirotech into actual office space, small and utilitarian, but ours. The next 18 months blurred into an upward trajectory of small successes building upon each other. A patent approval, contracts with 3 mid-sized manufacturing companies, positive write-ups in sustainability publications. We weren't revolutionary, yet weren't disrupting markets or making headlines. We were simply solving real problems with steady, incremental progress, the kind my family had never valued because it lacked the flash of instant prestige. Brandon texted on my 28th birthday. Heard you finally got some funding. Cute. Dad's company just closed a $40 million development deal. Perspective. I didn't respond. There was a time when that message would have cut deep, reinforcing all my doubts. Now it just seemed small. Evidence of a mindset I was outgrowing with each passing month. The real breakthrough came unexpectedly. A manufacturing conglomerate in Chicago, one that happened to be a major Chen Group client, implemented our waste reduction system as a pilot program. Their results were beyond even our projections. 42% reduction in landfill contribution, 28% savings in waste management costs, and a substantial boost to their environmental compliance scores. They didn't just renew their contract, they featured Envirotech in their annual sustainability report and recommended us to their entire supply chain. Suddenly, our small team of 7 was fielding calls from Fortune 500 companies. Our valuation jumped from promising startup to serious contender, almost overnight. I was reviewing expansion plans with Sophia when my phone lit up with my father's number, the first direct call from him in nearly 2 years. "Olivia," he said, his voice carrying that formal tone he used for business discussions. "I understand congratulations are in order. The Westfield contract is quite an achievement." I waited, sensing there was more. "Your brother has been following your company's progress. He thinks there might be synergies worth exploring between Chen Group's property development sustainability requirements and your solutions." The pause before solutions spoke volumes, the lingering reluctance to fully acknowledge what I'd built. "We'd need to see your full financial projections, of course," he continued, "and understand your growth strategy. Perhaps you could come to Boston for a family dinner to discuss possibilities." Family dinner. Those 2 words that had once been the site of so many small humiliations. I looked around at the office I'd built, the team working diligently at their stations, the awards we'd begun accumulating on our conference room wall. "I'm afraid I'm quite busy with our expansion," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "But Brandon is welcome to submit a formal partnership inquiry through our business development team. We evaluate all potential collaborations based on alignment with our mission and values." The silence that followed was unprecedented in Chen. Family dynamics. My father, momentarily speechless. "I see," he finally said. "This sounds rather corporate for a family discussion." It's rather corporate because it is corporate, I replied. Envirotech evaluates partnerships based on merit, not family connections. After my father's call, things shifted subtly. Brandon sent a formal partnership proposal, surprisingly well-researched but ultimately self-serving. We declined politely. My mother mentioned my company to her design clients, suddenly claiming she'd always supported Olivia's environmental interests. Elise asked if she could feature our office in a social media series on women disrupting tech. I recognized these overtures for what they were. Not apologies, not genuine recognition, but attempts to associate with success now that it had arrived in a form they understood. The Chen family currency had always been achievement. They were simply trying to collect interest on a relationship they hadn't invested in. 3 years after that rainy departure from Boston, Envirotech Solutions reached a valuation of $80 million following our Series B funding round. We had offices in Seattle, Portland, and Austin. Our client list included some of the largest manufacturers in North America, and our technology had helped divert millions of tons of waste from landfills. Success, it turned out, was a powerful clarifier. With it came perspective I couldn't access when struggling for validation. I no longer measured my worth against Chen family metrics. I'd created my own. That clarity served me well the day I received 3 separate emails from HR with the subject line, "Internal referral for consideration." "You need to see these," said Marcus, our newly hired HR director, placing the printed applications on my desk with an expression I couldn't quite read. The first application was from Brandon Chen, seeking our Chief Strategy Officer position. His cover letter emphasized his family connection to the founder and his ability to elevate Envirotech to Chen standards of excellence. The second was from Elise Chen, applying for Director of Brand Marketing, highlighting her social media following and ability to transform Envirotech's messaging into a lifestyle movement. The third caught me completely off guard. My father, Michael Chen, applying for a position on our board of directors, citing his mentorship of the founder from an early age, and guiding entrepreneurial vision across generations. I sat back, a strange calm settling over me. 3 people who had dismissed my vision, belittled my ambition, and predicted my failure were now seeking to attach themselves to what I had built without them, despite them. "They all listed you as their internal referral," Marcus said carefully. "I thought you should know before we proceeded with standard protocols." I nodded slowly, taking in the perfect symmetry of the moment. "Process them according to normal procedures," I said. "No special treatment in either direction. Merit-based evaluation only." Marcus looked surprised. "You don't want to, I don't know, automatically reject them? Or fast-track them? They're your family." I smiled, thinking of all the family. Dinners where my ideas were too impractical, my ambitions too unrealistic, my potential too limited for Chen greatness. "That's exactly why they need to go through the standard process," I said. "This company was built on evaluating true impact, not appearances or connections. We don't change those values for anyone, especially family." Later that evening, alone, in my office overlooking the Seattle skyline, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the emergency check my mother had left me 3 years earlier. I had never cashed it, not even during those desperate first months when instant ramen was a luxury. It had remained a symbol of conditional support I refused to accept. I wrote "void" across its face and placed it in an envelope along with brief notes declining each family member's application. To Brandon, "Your strategic vision impressed our committee, but your focus on profit over environmental impact doesn't align with our core mission. We wish you continued success at Chen Group." To Elise, "Your social media expertise is noteworthy, but we seek marketing leaders with demonstrated commitment to sustainability beyond recent interest. We'd welcome you to reapply after gaining relevant experience." To my father. Board positions at Envirotech require a documented history of environmental advocacy and sustainable business practices. While your business achievements are significant, they don't demonstrate the values alignment our stakeholders expect. Perhaps we can revisit this conversation when the Chen Group integrates genuine sustainability practices beyond compliance minimums. I sealed each envelope, then added one final note to my father's. You once told me I would never amount to anything in this field. You were wrong. But your doubt gave me something valuable, the freedom to succeed without the weight of your expectations. For that, I thank you. The next morning, I handed the envelopes to Marcus for mailing and turned my attention to our expansion planning. We were developing a new municipal waste tracking system that could revolutionize how cities manage their environmental impact. The work ahead was what mattered, not family validation that had arrived 3 years and $80 million too late. A week later, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. This isn't over. 3 words that once would have filled me with anxiety. Now they just seemed small, evidence of a mindset that couldn't comprehend success without control. I placed my phone face down on my desk and returned to reviewing Sophia's proposal for our next innovation cycle. The Chen family drama no longer commanded my attention. I had built something that mattered, not just a successful company, but a version of myself that no longer needed their approval to recognize her own worth. Sometimes the greatest achievement isn't proving others wrong. It's becoming so immersed in your own purpose that their opinions fade into irrelevance. The quiet girl who once sat at the family table hoping to be noticed had become a woman who built her own table, one where value was measured by impact, not appearances, and where there was always room for those once told they didn't belong. Life in Seattle was nothing like I had imagined during those long nights planning my escape in Boston. The incubator space, a converted textile factory with exposed brick and inconsistent heating, became my second home that first winter. While my family enjoyed their holiday gathering in our Beacon Hill mansion, I was huddled under a blanket, debugging code at 3 a.m., watching my breath form clouds in the frigid air. The grant money that had seemed substantial in Boston evaporated quickly in the tech ecosystem. Rent for even my modest studio apartment consumed nearly half my monthly budget. The remainder stretched thin between development costs, legal fees for patent applications, and the bare minimum for survival. I became intimately familiar with the dollar menu at the fast food place around the corner and mastered the art of making 1 pack of ramen last for 2 meals. My neighbors in the apartment building were kind but distant. Service workers, gig economy drivers, and fellow startups drivers, all of us too exhausted for more than passing hallway nods. Loneliness crept in during those early months, settling like the constant Seattle drizzle that soaked through even the best raincoat eventually. On particularly difficult nights, I'd find myself staring at my phone, thumb hovering over my father's contact. The Chen family safety net remained just one humbling phone call away. Brandon's voice echoed in my head. You'll be crawling back by spring. Each time, I'd set the phone down and return to my laptop. The first real breakthrough came 3 months in when I completed the initial prototype of our waste tracking algorithm. It wasn't pretty. The interface was clunky. The processing speed's inconsistent, but it worked. The system could analyze a company's waste stream in real time, identifying inefficiencies and recommending specific interventions that would reduce landfill contributions while cutting costs. I celebrated alone with a slightly better cup of ramen and an actual fresh vegetable, sending the prototype link to the 5 beta testers who'd agreed to trial the system. 4 responded with technical questions. 1, the sustainability director for a mid-sized manufacturing plant, called immediately. I've been waiting for something like this for years, she said, her voice charged with an enthusiasm I hadn't encountered since leaving Boston. We've been flying blind on our waste metrics. This could change everything about how we approach our environmental impact. That single call sustained me through the next 6 weeks of 18-hour workdays. as I refined the system based on her feedback. When she invited me to present to her executive team, I spent 3 days' food budget on having my only professional outfit dry cleaned. The presentation was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. At 8:57, as I stood in the company's gleaming lobby trying not to look as terrified as I felt, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Your cousin Angela just made partner at Goldman, 32 and already on track for the executive committee. Thought you'd want to know. No good luck or how are you doing? Just another installment in the ongoing chronicle of everyone else's success. A reminder of what real achievement looked like in the Chen family paradigm." I silenced my phone as the receptionist called my name. Walking into that boardroom, 12 executives in tailored suits, each earning more annually than my entire seed funding, I felt the familiar sensation of being the unqualified Chen, the family disappointment playing at business. Then I opened my laptop, pulled up the prototype, and something shifted. This wasn't about the Chen legacy or earning family approval. This was about solving a real problem that mattered. I knew this technology inside and out. I believed in its potential in a way I'd never believed in the path my father had laid out for me. Envirotech Solutions addresses the fundamental disconnect in corporate waste management, I began, my voice steadier than I'd anticipated. Companies can't effectively reduce what they can't accurately measure. Our system changes that equation. For the next 40 minutes, I walked them through the algorithm, the potential cost savings, the environmental impact. I answered technical questions without hesitation, proposed implementation timelines, addressed integration concerns. With each slide, each response, I felt something unfamiliar taking root. Confidence not borrowed from the Chen name, but earned through my own expertise. When I finished, the CFO, a stern-looking woman who hadn't smiled once during my presentation, leaned forward. "Your system claims to reduce waste management costs by up to 30%. That sounds optimistic." "It's actually conservative," I replied, pulling up our case study projections. "Based on our beta testing, companies of your size and waste profile typically see savings between 28 and 36% in the first year, with additional gains in years 2 and 3 as the AI continues to optimize." She studied the numbers, then looked up. "What's your timeline for a full deployment? And don't sugarcoat it. I need realistic projections." 3 months for integration with your existing systems, another month for calibration, then full functionality at the 5-month mark, I said. I'd rather promise 5 months and deliver in 4 than set unrealistic expectations. A hint of approval flickered across her face. Refreshing approach. Most tech vendors promise the moon in 30 days, then spend 6 months explaining delays. 2 hours later, I walked out with a signed contract, $175,000 for a year-long implementation, with a success bonus tied to actual waste reduction metrics. It wasn't just my first significant sale, it was validation that couldn't be dismissed as luck or charity. These executives didn't care about my family name or background. They cared about results. I called Sophia from the train, my hands shaking, so badly I could barely hold the phone. They signed. Full contract, no modifications. They want implementation to start next month. "Oh my God, Liv!" she shrieked. "That's amazing! I told you they'd see what I've always seen in you." "I need help," I admitted. "I can't handle this scale of implementation alone. How do you feel about Seattle?" Sophia's pause was brief. "I've always wanted to try living on the West Coast." 3 weeks later, she arrived with 2 suitcases and a degree in operations, management that had been languishing in her parents' insurance company. We converted half my studio apartment into a makeshift office, with a folding table from Goodwill serving as our shared desk. The next 4 months were a blur of coding sessions, client meetings, and midnight panic attacks over deployment challenges. We slept in shifts, traded protein bars for meals, and learned exactly how far 2 20-something women could push themselves before hallucinations set in. Sophia handled client communications and operational logistics while I focused on technical refinement and implementation. The day the system went fully operational at our client's facility, we sat in their control room watching the data stream in real time. The waste reduction metrics appeared on screen, 27% decrease from baseline in the first hour alone. Is that normal? The facility manager asked, peering at the numbers skeptically. It's actually on the lower end of what we projected, I said, checking the system diagnostics. Once the AI has a week of operational data to learn from, you should see that percentage increase. He shook his head, a mix of disbelief and admiration. We've had consultants working on waste reduction for years with nothing close to these results. That night, Sophia and I splurged on an actual restaurant dinner to celebrate. Nothing fancy, just a local pizza place, but with real plates and chairs that weren't salvaged from sidewalk discards. As we raised our water glasses in a toast, my phone buzzed with an email notification from Michael Chen, subject, Family Business Update. Olivia, the Chen Group has secured the Richardson Development Project, 42 Mahler. Brandon led the negotiations successfully despite competitive bidding. Your sister's interior design concepts were instrumental in securing the client's trust. The position we discussed before your departure remains available should you reconsider. Your current situation. Family legacy matters. Regards, Michael Chen, CEO, Chen Group. No acknowledgement of my 7 months of radio silence. No questions about my progress. Just another Chen family scorecard with an implicit invitation to surrender. I showed Sophia the email, something I hadn't done with previous family communications. She read it, her expression darkening. Has he always been this dismissive? She asked, handing the phone back. This is actually him being subtle, I said with a half smile. At least he's not directly calling me a failure this time. Are you going to respond? I considered the question, looking around the small pizza place, at the couple laughing in the corner, the server counting her tips, the cook visible through the kitchen window carefully sliding a pizza onto a wooden paddle. Normal people living. Normal lives making choices based on their own values, not family expectations. No, I decided. There's nothing to say. Sophia nodded, understanding without needing explanation. To Envirotech's first successful implementation, she said, raising her water glass again, and to building something that matters. As I clinked my glass against hers, I realized the weight of my family's judgment was lightening, not gone, but no longer the crushing pressure it had once been. One successful client wasn't financial security or industry disruption, but it was proof of concept, both for the technology and for my own capabilities. The success with our first client led to 2 referrals, then 3 more. By the end of our first year, Envirotech had 6 active implementations, a barely profitable balance sheet, and a growing reputation in the industrial sustainability sector. We moved out of my apartment into a modest office space with actual heating and hired our first 2 employees, a back-end developer named Rick and a data analyst named Priya. The workload remained overwhelming, but the nature of the stress evolved, from existential panic to growth management challenges. I still worked 14-hour days, but now they ended with tangible accomplishments rather than desperate hope. We were small, underfunded, and overextended, but undeniably real. My 28th birthday passed without fanfare, marked only by a cupcake Sophia brought to the office, and an automated email from my mother's secretary with the standard Chen family birthday fund transfer, a tradition begun by my grandfather, that I hadn't accessed since leaving Boston. The money sat untouched in a separate account, a financial lifeline I refused to grab. 2 days later, I received a LinkedIn request that made me spill coffee across my keyboard. Jason Kim, founder of Emergence Ventures, and one of Seattle's most prominent tech investors. I'd met him briefly at a sustainability conference months, Earlier, where he'd expressed interest in envirotech, only to have me awkwardly decline further conversation after learning his fund had investments in petroleum companies. His message was unexpectedly direct. Your waste reduction metrics for manufactech are impressive. I was wrong about the implementation timeline. You were right to call me out on our portfolio conflicts. Coffee this week to discuss how we've restructured our investment thesis? I stared at the message for 10 minutes, reading between the lines. Emergence Ventures rarely approached companies at our stage. They typically entered at Series A with significant capital. And they certainly didn't admit being wrong about anything. Either this was a strange prank or something had fundamentally changed. We met at a coffee shop near his office, the kind of place where a single latte cost more than my daily food. Budget. Jason arrived without the entourage typical of investors at his level, dressed in a casual sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "I'll be blunt," he said after minimal small talk. "Your technology is solving a problem that most of the industry doesn't even properly understand yet. Your first client implementation data is the most compelling waste reduction case study I've seen, and I've been tracking this sector for 5 years." I sipped my coffee, unsure how to respond to direct praise that didn't come with Chen family qualifiers. "You turned down our initial interest because of our petroleum investments," he continued. "Most founders would take money from anyone offering, especially at your stage. That integrity caught my attention." "It wasn't entirely integrity," I admitted. "I just couldn't build technology to solve environmental problems with money made creating those same problems. The cognitive dissonance would have been too much." He nodded. "That's why I'm here. Emergence has spent the past 6 months divesting from all fossil fuel holdings. We've repositioned our entire investment thesis around sustainability technologies. With proven impact metrics, your company is exactly what we're looking to back." I set my coffee down, suddenly hyper-aware of the opportunity materializing. "What exactly are you proposing?" $2 million in Series A funding, favorable terms, technical resources to scale your implementation capabilities, network access to potential clients across our portfolio, and board seats that remain founder-controlled. He slid a folder across the table. "The term sheet is straightforward. Have your lawyers review it, but I think you'll find it aligns with your vision rather than trying to redirect it." My hand trembled slightly as I opened the folder. The numbers were exactly as he'd stated: fair valuation, reasonable equity, dilution, founder protections that most first-time entrepreneurs could only dream of securing. "Why these terms?" I asked, looking up. "You could push for more control, more equity." Jason's expression softened. "Because I've learned something in 15 years of investing. When founders build from authentic purpose, controlling them usually kills what made them special in the first place. You understand waste reduction systems in a way my entire team of analysts doesn't. I'm investing in that insight and your ability to execute on it, not in controlling your process." It was the opposite of everything the Chen family had taught me about business relationships. That control was currency, that advantage must be pressed, that sentiment was weakness in negotiations. Jason wasn't just offering capital, he was offering partnership based on mutual value rather than dominance. "I'll need to discuss this with my team," I said, closing the folder. "We've been bootstrapping so long that bringing in external capital is a significant shift." "Of course," he nodded. "Take the week. But Olivia—" He paused, ensuring he had my full attention. "What you're building matters, not just as a business, but as a solution to problems we can't afford to ignore anymore. Don't let perfect be the enemy of progress here." As I walked back to our office, term sheet clutched tightly, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. "Brandon." I nearly declined. It automatically but paused, curious about the timing. We hadn't spoken directly in over a year. "Olivia," he said when I answered, his voice carrying that particular blend of condescension and forced cheer. "How's the recycling app business? Still keeping the lights on? The familiar diminishment. Reducing. A complex AI-driven waste management system to a recycling app would have stung a year ago. Now it just highlighted how little he understood about my work. "We're doing well," I said neutrally. "What can I help you with, Brandon?" "Actually, I might be able to help you," he replied, confidence flowing through his words. "I'm heading up the Chen Group's new ESG compliance division. Dad's finally recognized that environmental metrics matter to institutional investors. We're looking at technology partners to demonstrate our commitment." I stopped walking, processing the subtext of his offer. After years of dismissing my environmental focus as impractical idealism, the Chen Group was now creating a division specifically to address it. Not from conviction, but from market pressure. "We could fast-track you as a preferred vendor," Brandon continued. "Skip all the usual qualification hoops. Put the Chen name behind your little startup. Could be the breakthrough you've been waiting for." The irony was almost too perfect, being offered legitimacy by the same people who had denied it consistently throughout my life. And the timing, coinciding with Jason's investment offer, felt less like serendipity and more like the Chen family's uncanny radar for success they could attach themselves to. "That's an interesting proposition," I said carefully. "Why don't you have your ESG team send over the compliance requirements you're looking to address? I'll have our technical staff evaluate if there's alignment." The brief pause told me he hadn't expected this response. Professional, detached, neither eager nor dismissive. "Sure," he finally said. "I'll have someone send the RFP documents. But Liv, this is family. We don't need to be so formal." "Actually, Brandon, we do," I replied, my voice steady. "Envirotech evaluates all potential partnerships based on technical alignment and shared values. Family connections don't change our due diligence process." Another pause, longer this time. "Dad won't like that approach." "I'm not running my company for Dad's approval," I said, surprising myself with the calm certainty in my voice. "If the Chen Group wants to work with Envirotech, it will be because our solution meets your needs, not because I'm seeking family validation." When I returned to the office, I placed both the term sheet and my conversation with Brandon before Sophia, Rick, and Priya. Their reactions couldn't have been more different. Excitement bordering on disbelief about the investment, offer, and knowing skepticism about the Chen Group's sudden interest. $2 million with these terms is practically unheard of for a company our size, Rick said, reviewing the numbers. "This could accelerate our development roadmap by years." "And the Chen Group suddenly cares about waste reduction?" Sophia raised an eyebrow. "After your brother called it," and I quote from his holiday text, "hippie metrics for companies without real business priorities?" I smiled at her perfect recall of Brandon's dismissiveness. Institutional investors are demanding ESG compliance. Data. The Chen Group is responding to market forces, not having an ethical awakening. "So what do we do?" Priya asked, looking between the documents. "Take the investment and ignore your family? Work with both? Tell your family to take a hike?" I considered the question, thinking about the paths converging before me. The Chen way would be strategic manipulation. Use Jason's interest to leverage better terms from the family, or use the family connection to negotiate with Jason. Always maximize advantage. Always control the relationship. But that approach no longer aligned with the company I was building or the person I was becoming. "We accept Jason's investment," I decided. His firm has demonstrated actual commitment to sustainability, not just compliance theater. As for the Chen Group, we'll review their RFP like any other potential client. If there's genuine alignment, we'll consider a partnership. If it's just a green marketing exercise, we'll decline. "Your family might take that personally," Rick pointed out. "Probably," I agreed. "But I didn't build Envirotech to win family approval. I built it to solve real environmental problems. We maintain that mission regardless of who gets offended." That night, alone in my apartment, I drafted 2 emails. The first to Jason, accepting his investment offer, subject to final legal review. The second to Brandon, a professional acknowledgement of his inquiry and a request for detailed compliance requirements that we could evaluate. As I was about to send them, I received a text from my father, the first direct communication from him since I'd left Boston. Heard from Brandon about potential synergies between our organizations. The Chen Group could be instrumental in establishing your technology's credibility. Let's discuss how to structure this relationship advantageously. Dinner when I'm in Seattle. Next week? The old pull of seeking his approval flickered briefly. The daughter who had spent decades trying to earn a place at the family table. But alongside it arose a clearer understanding. This wasn't about reconnection or recognition of my accomplishments. This was about the Chen Group identifying a useful asset and moving to control it. The same dynamic that had defined my childhood, just in a new context. I finished my emails, then crafted a brief response to my father. Thank you for the dinner invitation. Unfortunately, we're in the middle of closing our Series A funding round, and my schedule is fully committed to investor and client meetings. The Envirotech team will review the Chen Group's RFP when we receive it and determine if there's sufficient alignment with our technical capabilities and mission focus. I'm sure Brandon can keep you updated on that process. Professional, bounded. Neither hostile nor eager. The response of a CEO to a potential business relationship, not a daughter seeking validation. I pressed send before I could second-guess myself, then opened the window to let in the cool Seattle night air. The city lights sparkled below, so different from Boston's older, more established glow. Here, everything felt in process, becoming rather than been, the perfect ecosystem for reinvention. My phone buzzed with an incoming email, Jason confirming. Our meeting with his legal team tomorrow. No drama, no power dynamics, just straightforward next steps in a professional relationship. This, I realized, was what healthy business engagement felt like. Collaborative rather than competitive. Focused on mutual success rather than dominance. Everything the Chen Group approach wasn't. As I prepared for bed, I noticed the small jade plant on my windowsill, the only item I'd brought from my childhood room. It had struggled during those first difficult months, dropping leaves and withering in the unfamiliar climate. I'd nearly thrown it out multiple times, seeing its decline as yet another failure. But I'd kept watering it, adjusting its sunlight, learning its needs through careful attention rather than assumption. Now it was flourishing, sending out new growth in all directions, stronger in this new environment than it had ever been in the carefully controlled Chen household. Some things, it turned out, needed different soil to reach their full potential. I was one of them. The morning after signing the term sheet with Emergence Ventures, our office felt different. Not physically, with its mismatched furniture and temperamental heating system, but energetically. The constant undercurrent of financial anxiety that had hummed beneath every decision, every client call, every late-night coding session had shifted to something steadier. Not complacency, we were far too early stage for that luxury, but a foundation beneath our feet where before there had been only thin air and determination. Sophia arrived with 4 cups of actually decent coffee balanced in a cardboard tray, a rare splurge that signaled her own recognition of the milestone. I ran the numbers 3 times last night, she said, distributing the cups to Rick and Priya. With this funding, we can actually hire the development team we need, secure the cloud infrastructure for proper scaling, and still have runway for 18 months. Rick raised his cup in a toast. To no more choosing between paying the electricity bill and upgrading our servers. We laughed, the shared memory of our most stressful days now transforming into the kind of war stories early employees tell when a company finally finds its footing. Yet beneath the celebration, I felt an unexpected hollowness, a space where the validation of my family should have been, but wasn't. I hadn't told them about the funding round. hadn't shared our client successes or growth projections. The silence between Boston and Seattle had gradually transformed from a painful absence to a habitual boundary. Still, some childish part of me wished my father could see what I was building, that Brandon would acknowledge the vision he'd dismissed, that my mother would recognize the purpose that drove me beyond Chen-approved ambitions. The thought evaporated as Jason arrived for our scheduled post-signing meeting, his casual confidence filling our modest space without judgment. He brought his technical advisor, a former software architect from one of the major cloud providers who immediately engaged with Rick in rapid-fire discussions about our platform architecture. "We need to discuss expansion strategy," Jason said, settling into our only conference room, a converted storage closet with a folding table and mismatched chairs. "Your current client implementation method isn't scalable. One client at a time, with your personal oversight, works at this stage, but not with the growth trajectory we're envisioning." I bristled slightly, the familiar sensation of having my approach critiqued activating old defensive patterns. "Our implementation process is thorough because waste management systems vary dramatically across industries. Cookie-cutter solutions fail." Instead of dismissing my concern as my family would have, Jason nodded. "Absolutely right. But the question isn't whether to standardize, it's how to systematize without losing the customization that makes your solution effective. I've brought some ideas." He opened his laptop, revealing a presentation outlining an implementation framework that preserved our core methodology while creating repeatable processes that could be executed by properly trained teams rather than requiring my direct involvement at every stage. "This would let you scale to 10 concurrent implementations instead of 2 or 3, he explained, walking us through the workflow diagrams. "Your expertise becomes the guiding architecture, not the execution bottleneck." The approach was elegant, honoring the essence of what made our solution work while removing the limitations I hadn't even recognized I was imposing. In the Chen group, suggestions always carried implicit criticism. This would be better if... Perpetually undermining confidence. Jason's approach felt fundamentally different, collaborative problem-solving rather than hierarchical correction. "We'd need to build training materials, standardized assessment tools," I mused, already seeing how we could adapt his framework to our specific needs. "And hire implementation specialists with sustainability backgrounds." "Already identified some candidates," Sophia chimed in, pulling up a spreadsheet she'd apparently been developing quietly. "Former environmental compliance officers, waste management experts from the municipal sector, people who understand the problem deeply and can be trained on our technical solution." I glanced at her, surprised and impressed. "You've been thinking about this scaling challenge for a while." She shrugged, a hint of apology in her smile. "You were handling the technical evolution and investor relations. Someone needed to be planning for what happens when we actually succeed. That's kind of my job." That evening, after our new investors had departed with clear next steps and timelines, I stayed late reviewing the implementation strategy. Our office, a converted industrial space in a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood, felt bigger somehow, as if the possibilities before us had physically expanded our square footage. My phone buzzed with an email notification. The Chen Group, specifically their newly formed ESG division. Brandon had finally sent the RFP he'd mentioned, titled Environmental Compliance Tracking for Real Estate Development. I opened it, curious, about how my family's company had framed their sudden interest in sustainability. The document was impressive in its thoroughness. 20 pages of detailed requirements, compliance standards, reporting needs. But as I read deeper, the true purpose became clear. This wasn't about meaningful environmental impact. It was about creating the appearance of environmental responsibility while changing as little as possible about their actual development practices. They wanted a system that would highlight their minimal compliance efforts, generate positive-looking metrics from marginal improvements, and produce investor-friendly reports that maximize the perception of sustainability without requiring substantial changes to their core business model. It was, in essence, greenwashing technology, exactly what I had vowed Envirotech would never enable. I closed the document and drafted a response. Thank you for considering Envirotech Solutions. For your environmental compliance needs, after careful review of your requirements, we've determined that our platform's focus on meaningful waste reduction and environmental impact isn't aligned with the reporting-centered approach outlined in your RFP. Our technology is designed to create substantive change in environmental practices, not simply document compliance minimums for investor presentations. We wish you success in finding a solution better matched to your specific goals. My finger hovered over the send button, old hesitations surfacing. This was the Chen Group, the family business, the empire that had funded my education, the safety net I'd chosen to abandon. Declining their business wasn't just a professional decision, it was another severing of already frayed family ties. And yet, sending this email felt necessary, not as rejection of my family but as affirmation of Envirotech's integrity and my own. We had built this company to create real environmental impact, not to help corporations pretend at sustainability while continuing harmful practices. I pressed send before I could second-guess further, then turned back to the implementation framework Jason had proposed. The past was the past. Our future required my full attention. The next morning, I arrived to find Sophia already at her desk, frowning at her computer screen. "Your brother called the office line 3 times already," she said without preamble. "Apparently, someone didn't appreciate your response to their RFP." I sighed, unsurprised but still disappointed. "What did he say?" "First call, have Olivia call me immediately. Second call, this is unacceptable. Third call just 5 minutes ago. Tell Olivia that her father expects her to reconsider this decision immediately." Sophia's imitation of Brandon's imperious tone was unnervingly accurate. "I told him you were in meetings all day but would return his call when possible." "So basically never," I said, attempting lightheartedness despite the familiar tension tightening my shoulders. "That was the implication," she agreed, then hesitated. "Liv, I know it's not my place, but they're treating your company like it's still some hobby you need to be guided on, like you haven't built something legitimate here." "That's the Chen family specialty," I replied, unlocking my computer. "Nothing is real unless they've approved it first." Before I could say more, my phone rang, my father's direct line, the one reserved for Chen Group executives and family emergencies. I showed the screen to Sophia, who raised her eyebrows. "Want me to accidentally spill coffee on your phone?" she offered. I smiled but shook my head. Might as well get this over with. Stepping into our makeshift conference room, I answered, "With a professional, Olivia Chen." "What exactly do you think you're doing?" My father's voice carried the same authoritative displeasure it had when I brought home A- instead of A's, when I chose environmental science over business administration, when I announced my move to Seattle. "Brandon showed me your email. Declining a Chen Group partnership opportunity is completely unacceptable. Not hello, not how are you, not congratulations on securing significant venture funding. Just immediate disappointment at my failure to comply with unspoken family expectations. Our platform isn't designed for the kind of surface-level reporting the RFP outlined," I explained, keeping my voice even. "Envirotech creates actual waste reduction, not attractive metrics for investor presentations." "Don't be naive, Olivia," he scoffed. "All business relationships involve compromise. Your idealistic approach won't survive real market demands." The familiar dismissal, that my principles were childish, that pragmatism inevitably meant abandoning values, landed differently now. Not as parental wisdom I should heed, but as evidence of a worldview I no longer shared. "Our investors disagree," I replied. They specifically backed Envirotech because of our commitment to substantive environmental impact, not compliance theater. A brief silence then. Investors? What investors? The genuine surprise in his voice confirmed my suspicion that the Chen family radar for opportunity had detected something but lacked specific details. They had sensed Envirotech gaining traction but didn't know about our funding round. Information that would have been readily available had they shown any genuine interest in my work before seeking to co-opt it. We closed our Series A last week, I said simply. Emergence Ventures led the round. Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear the calculations happening. Emergence Ventures was well known in investment circles, their involvement lending immediate credibility. That changed the dynamics of our conversation. Jason Kim's fund? Interesting choice, my father finally said, his tone shifting to something more collegial, as if we were suddenly peers discussing business strategy. Their terms tend to be founder-friendly, but limit long-term growth potential. The Chen Group could have provided more strategic capital. We're quite satisfied with our investors' approach, I replied. Their vision for sustainability technology aligns with ours. Well, perhaps we should discuss this partnership opportunity in person, he continued, ignoring my gentle refusal. I'll be in Seattle next Thursday. Dinner at Canlis. I'll have my assistant send the details. The presumption was so familiar that my time was automatically available, that I would naturally prioritize his visit, that my professional assessment could be reversed over an expensive meal. The Chen way of doing business, where relationships always trumped principles, where family, authority was final. I won't be reconsidering our decision on the RFP, I said firmly, and I'm unavailable for dinner. We're in the middle of implementing our expansion strategy, and my schedule is fully committed. The silence that followed had a different quality than his previous pauses, a stunned disbelief rather than strategic recalculation. In 28 years, I had never directly refused a Chen family summons, especially not from my father. Olivia, he said finally, his voice hardening, I understand you're proud of this little venture of yours, but turning your back on family business opportunities is short-sighted and, frankly, ungrateful. The Chen name opened doors for you, provided your education, gave you the foundation for whatever success you're currently enjoying. The words were designed to activate my deepest insecurities, that my achievements weren't truly mine, that I would forever be indebted to the family legacy, that independence was an illusion rather than a reality. A year ago, they might have worked. Now, they simply revealed the transactional nature of what I had once mistaken for support. I'm not turning my back on family, I corrected quietly. I'm making a business decision based on mission alignment and technical compatibility. Would you partner with a company whose approach fundamentally contradicted the Chen Group's core values simply because the owner was a relative? That's different, he dismissed. It's exactly the same, I countered. You raised me to make sound business decisions. That's what I'm doing. I raised you to understand loyalty, he replied, anger finally breaking through his controlled facade. To recognize opportunities presented by those who have supported you. To understand the importance of family legacy. I took a deep breath, suddenly aware that we were having two entirely different conversations. He was speaking from a worldview where family obligation trumped all other considerations, where personal autonomy was always secondary to collective advancement. I was operating from a place where integrity and purpose guided decisions, where relationships, even family ones, needed to respect boundaries. I appreciate everything you and Mom provided, I said carefully. My education, my opportunities, my understanding of business fundamentals. Those advantages helped me reach this point. But Envirotech's technology isn't a good fit for the Chen Group's needs as outlined in the RFP. That's not personal, it's professional. With family, everything is personal, he stated flatly. I'm disappointed in your decision, Olivia. deeply disappointed. The familiar words, his go-to expression of displeasure throughout my childhood, no longer carried the devastating weight they once had. They were just words, shaped by his expectations rather than my worth. "I understand," I said simply. "I have another call scheduled now. Please give my regards to Mom." I ended the call before he could respond, sitting alone in our tiny conference room as a strange lightness spread through me. I had anticipated guilt, perhaps even wavering, resolve. Instead, I felt an unexpected clarity. Not triumph or vindication, but the simple recognition that I was finally making decisions from my own center, rather than in reaction to Chen family expectations. When I emerged, Sophia looked up anxiously. "Battle damage assessment?" "Minor wounds, nothing fatal," I replied with a small smile. I just declined dinner with my father and confirmed our rejection of the Chen Group RFP. Her eyes widened. "And you're still standing? No spontaneous combustion? No earth swallowing you whole?" "Surprisingly, the world continues to turn," I said, the lightness expanding into something close to liberation. "Now, let's get back to building a company that matters." The weeks that followed passed in a blur of purposeful activity. With Emergence's funding secured, we implemented Jason's scaling framework, hired our first dedicated implementation team, moved to larger office space, and secured contracts with 5 new clients, all mid-sized manufacturing companies committed to meaningful waste reduction rather than superficial compliance. Brandon called twice more, his messages shifting from imperious demands to increasingly conciliatory offers of reconsidering the terms of collaboration. I responded with professional, courtesy but unwavering boundaries, suggesting alternative providers who might better meet their specific needs. My mother sent a rare direct email, its carefully composed sentences betraying her discomfort with the medium. "Your father is quite upset about this business misunderstanding. Perhaps you could find some compromise regarding the Chen Group proposal. Family harmony sometimes requires flexibility on all sides." The message was quintessentially Grace Chen, conflict-averse, focused on surface appearance rather than underlying issues, gently pressuring the path of least resistance. I crafted an equally careful response. "There's no misunderstanding, just different business priorities. Envirotech focuses on creating actual environmental impact, not compliance reporting. I'm sure the Chen Group will find a more suitable technology partner for their specific needs. No apology, no compromise on the core issue, but also no unnecessary antagonism. Professional boundaries rather than emotional reaction." Elise, ever the family barometer, texted with characteristic bluntness. "Dad's on the warpath about you rejecting the family business. What gives? Just take the contract and make modifications. Not worth the drama." I didn't respond. Elise had never understood my resistance to the easier path, had always seen my principles as performative complexity rather than genuine conviction. In the Chen family hierarchy, she had secured her position through perfect compliance with expected roles. She couldn't fathom willingly stepping outside that protection. As Envirotech's growth accelerated, my focus necessarily shifted from family dynamics to leadership challenges. We doubled our staff in 3 months, outgrew our new office space in 5, and began expanding our technology platform beyond waste management into comprehensive environmental impact monitoring. Jason proved to be the ideal investor, present when needed, hands-off when appropriate, always adding value rather than simply exerting control. When technical challenges emerged, he connected us with specialist engineers. When a key hire wavered, he made a personal call that sealed the decision. When our first significant competitor emerged, he helped us differentiate our market position, rather than panicking. "You're thinking too small," he said during one strategy session, pushing aside my carefully calculated growth projections. "This isn't just about the clients you can sign this quarter. It's about the industry you're reshaping." Every successful implementation isn't just revenue, it's proof that businesses can profit from environmental responsibility. His vision expanded my own, helping me see beyond the day-to-day operational challenges to the larger impact we were creating. Envirotech wasn't just a growing company. It was a case study in profitable sustainability, a direct challenge to the Chen Group's assertion that environmental principles were incompatible with business success. 9 months after declining the Chen Group's RFP, I received an unexpected LinkedIn message from Thomas Westfield, the CFO of one of Boston's largest commercial real estate developers, and a longtime Chen Group competitor. Your waste reduction system has generated impressive results for North Star Manufacturing. We're interested in implementing similar technology across our properties. Available to discuss next week when I'm in Seattle? The meeting with Westfield was unlike any client interaction I'd experienced. No need to justify our approach or defend our pricing. He arrived with his sustainability director and their technical team, all of them already convinced of our value proposition based on verified results from existing implementations. We've been watching your company's progress, Westfield explained, as his team dove into technical discussions with Rick and our development staff. Your focus on actual impact rather than compliance theater is refreshing. Most vendors in this space are selling glorified reporting tools that generate pretty graphs for investor presentations while changing nothing substantial. The description so perfectly matched the Chen Group's RFP that I nearly laughed aloud. That's exactly the kind of surface-level approach we've refused to enable, I acknowledged. Our system only works if companies are genuinely committed to reducing their environmental impact. Westfield nodded approvingly. Which is why we're here. Our board has set ambitious waste reduction targets, not just for compliance reasons, but because the financial benefits are becoming impossible to ignore. Lower waste management costs, reduced regulatory fees, positive consumer response. Sustainability isn't charity anymore. It's competitive advantage. By the end of the meeting, we had outlined implementation plans for Westfield's 3 largest properties, with expansion potential across their entire portfolio. The contract value, $2 million over 2 years, would make them our largest client by a significant margin. As we wrapped up, Westfield mentioned casually, "We actually explored several vendors before selecting Envirotech. Your approach stood out, particularly compared to the Chen Group's new green compliance system." I kept my expression neutral despite my surprise. The Chen Group is implementing environmental technology? Attempting to, Westfield corrected with a slight smile. They've cobbled together something they're calling an ESG compliance dashboard. All surface, no substance. Typical Michael Chen approach. Looks impressive in boardroom presentations, but changes nothing fundamental about how business operates. The casual dismissal of my father's business philosophy from a respected industry peer was jarring, not because it was unfair, but because it so perfectly articulated the values conflict that had driven me from Boston to Seattle. "You seem familiar with the Chen Group's approach," I observed carefully. Westfield's expression shifted to one of mild amusement. "Michael and I have been competitors for 20 years. His focus has always been on appearance over substance, properties that look impressive but cut corners on quality, sustainability initiatives that generate press without meaningful impact. The Chen approach is consistent, if nothing else." I simply nodded, neither confirming nor denying knowledge of Chen business practices. Westfield studied me for a moment, then added, "I understand there's a connection between Envirotech and the Chen family. I hope that doesn't create complications for our potential partnership." "No complications," I assured him. Envirotech operates independently, with our own investors, board, and business philosophy. Any family connections remain personal rather than professional. He seemed satisfied with this response, and we concluded our meeting with clear next steps for contract finalization. As his team departed, Sophia gave me a meaningful look. Did I hear correctly? The Chen Group tried to build their own version of our platform after we rejected their RFP? Apparently so, I replied, processing this new information. And according to Westfield, it's exactly what we suspected. Appearance without substance. Are you surprised? She asked, gathering the meeting materials. I considered the question, reflecting on the patterns that had defined my family's approach to business and life. No, I said finally. Not surprised. Just... What? Validated, I decided. All those years of being told my approach was naive, that meaningful environmental impact couldn't coexist with business success. Now we're signing multi-million-dollar contracts, specifically because we refuse to compromise those principles. The Westfield contract marked a turning point for Envirotech, not just financially, though the $2 million infusion certainly transformed our operational capabilities, but strategically. When a market leader in commercial real estate publicly committed to our platform, other developers took notice. Suddenly, we weren't chasing meetings. Potential clients were pursuing us, eager to implement similar solutions across their properties. Our team expanded rapidly, growing from 12 people to 35 within 4 months. We moved to proper headquarters in downtown Seattle, a renovated warehouse with exposed timber beams and floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded the space with natural light. The contrast between this vibrant workspace and the sterile Chen Group, offices where I'd been expected to build my future, couldn't have been more striking. Jason connected us with a seasoned operations executive named Diana, who helped establish proper organizational structure as we scaled. Sophia stepped into a formal COO role, managing our growing implementation teams with remarkable effectiveness. Rick built out our engineering department, transforming our prototype into a robust, scalable platform that could handle multiple concurrent deployments. My role evolved too. Less hands-on coding, more strategic direction. I found myself speaking at sustainability conferences, meeting with policymakers interested in our waste reduction metrics, conducting media interviews about the business case for environmental technology. The quiet, overlooked Chen daughter was becoming a recognized voice in an industry my family had dismissed as irrelevant. One evening, reviewing quarterly projections with Sophia, I received a notification that Envirotech had been mentioned in the Wall Street Journal. The article, Environmental Tech Startups Reshaping Corporate Sustainability, highlighted our company as a leader in the emerging field of profit-positive environmental solutions. Envirotech Solutions, founded by MIT graduate Olivia Chen, has secured contracts with industry leaders by proving that meaningful waste reduction directly improves profitability, the journalist wrote. Unlike traditional environmental consultancies that focus on compliance and reporting, Envirotech's AI-driven systems create measurable operational efficiencies that reduce both environmental impact and operational costs. Sophia read over my shoulder, grinning. First major press mention. Should we frame it for the office wall? Maybe, I said, still absorbing the strange sensation of seeing my name in a publication my father religiously consulted for business intelligence. Though the MIT graduate part is a bit misleading. I only did my undergraduate there. That's what you're focusing on? Not the fact that you're being recognized as an industry leader? Sophia shook her head in fond exasperation. Some things never change, Liv. Take the win. She was right, of course. This kind of validation, public, professional, from a respected business publication, was worth acknowledging. Not because external approval defined our value, but because it amplified our message about environmental technology's business case. I hadn't yet finished reading the article when my phone buzzed with an incoming text from Elise. Just saw WSJ article. Dad's having conniptions. Says Westfield choosing your system over Chen ESG platform is family betrayal. Dinner conversations. Are tense these days. Congrats, I guess. The message contained no actual congratulations, just the typical Elise blend of family gossip and subtle undermining. I didn't respond, having learned that engaging with family commentary only prolonged cycles of manipulation and judgment. Instead, I forwarded the article link to Jason with a simple note. First major press recognition. Thank you for helping us reach this milestone. His response came minutes later. Don't thank me. This is entirely your team's achievement. But this is just the beginning. Look at the market gap you're filling. Most environmental tech is still focused on documentation rather than transformation. You're changing that equation. That night, I walked home through downtown Seattle rather than taking my usual rideshare, needing physical movement to process the day's developments. The city had become home in ways Boston never quite managed, its innovation-focused energy matching my own approach to problem-solving, its less rigid social hierarchies allowing space for reinvention. My phone buzzed again, Brandon this time, his text briefer than Elise's, but more pointed. Westfield contract should have been Chen. Groups, your technology built on family resources. Professional courtesy would have meant declining competitive engagement. The accusation was so fundamentally misaligned with reality that I almost laughed aloud on the sidewalk. I had built EnviroTech precisely because the Chen Group had rejected environmental innovation as irrelevant, had funded it through grants, personal sacrifice, and eventually outside investment after my family dismissed it as impractical idealism, had created its core technology through thousands of hours of work my father had characterized as wasting your potential. And now, somehow, this success belonged to the Chen family? Their resources had created it? Their business was entitled to competitive protection? I typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on silence. Brandon's perspective wasn't something I could correct with a text message. It emerged from the Chen family's fundamental worldview, that individual achievement existed only within the context of family advancement, that independence was a form of disloyalty rather than healthy differentiation. When I reached my apartment, modest one-bedroom I'd maintained despite EnviroTech's improving finances, another notification appeared, a LinkedIn message from my father. The formal channel choice itself communicated volumes about where our relationship now stood. Olivia, the Wall Street Journal article has generated interest in your technology among Chen Group board members. Perhaps it's time to reconsider potential synergies between our organizations. The Westfield implementation creates certain competitive complications, but family cooperation could resolve these tensions. Available to discuss this week. The message reflected my father's consistent approach, acknowledging my success only, to immediately attempt to fold it back into the Chen framework, recasting independent achievement as potential family asset. No congratulations, no recognition of the years of work, just strategic repositioning. I closed the app without responding, opened my laptop, and returned to the quarterly projections Sophia and I had been reviewing. EnviroTech was projected to reach $15 million in annual recurring revenue by year-end, a milestone that would trigger certain investor thresholds and open possibilities for international expansion. That future demanded my focus, not Chen family politics. 2 days later, an email from an unfamiliar address appeared in my inbox. The sender, Margaret Chen, my father's sister, had never directly contacted me before. Our interactions had been limited to obligatory family gatherings where she'd faithfully echoed my father's assessments of my choices and potential. Subject: a different perspective. Olivia, your recent success with EnviroTech has created significant discussions within the family. While your father's disappointment about the Westfield contract is well known, I wanted to offer a different perspective. Some of us recognize that you've built something meaningful on your own terms. The environmental focus that seemed impractical 3 years ago has proven both profitable and important. Your courage in pursuing this path despite family skepticism deserves acknowledgement. Would you consider having coffee when I'm in Seattle next month? No agenda beyond reconnection. Family relationships can evolve, even after difficult periods. Regards, Margaret Chen. The message was unexpected in both its existence and content. Aunt Margaret had always been a Chen family loyalist, her business career built within my father's shadow, her opinions careful echoes of his perspectives. This outreach suggested either a genuine shift in her thinking or a more subtle family strategy to re-establish connection and potentially influence after direct approaches had failed. I read the message several times, searching for manipulative undertones, hidden expectations, the familiar Chen methods of control masquerading as support. The language seemed genuinely conciliatory, but experience had taught me that family overtures typically carried unseen conditions. After careful consideration, I composed a measured response. Thank you for reaching out. My schedule is quite full with Envirotech's expansion, but I could make time for coffee during your Seattle visit. Please let me know your dates and we'll find a convenient time. Professional, neither eager nor dismissive. A boundary-conscious opening rather than immediate trust. The Chen family had taught me caution in relationships. I was applying that lesson to its source. Margaret's response came quickly, suggesting she'd been waiting for my reply. Wonderful. I'll be there June 15th, 17. Looking forward to catching up. I added the coffee meeting to my calendar, then turned my attention back to Envirotech's expanding horizons. We had signed 2 additional major contracts that week, bringing our client portfolio to 27 active implementations across North America. Our data scientists were aggregating waste reduction metrics across industries, creating benchmark standards that were being cited by environmental policy experts. The work continued regardless of family dynamics. The day before my scheduled meeting with Aunt Margaret, I received an unexpected visitor at our office. Brandon, unannounced and uninvited, appeared at reception asking to see me. Sophia texted from the front desk. Your brother is here. Security wants to know if they should send him up or escort him out. I'm voting for option B, but it's your call. The sudden appearance was typical Brandon, assuming access without consideration for professional boundaries or schedules. In Boston, I would have immediately accommodated him, rearranging my day to address whatever he deemed important enough for a personal visit. In Seattle, leading a company of 42 people with client commitments and investor responsibilities, the calculation was different. I have 15 minutes between my current meeting and my next call, I texted back. He can have that window if he wants it. Brandon appeared in my office doorway 5 minutes later, his expression a familiar blend of entitlement and impatience. He wore a perfectly tailored suit that somehow looked out of place among our more casual tech workspace, his Chen Group lapel pin gleaming under the overhead lights. Nice of you to make time in your busy schedule, he said, the sarcasm evident, as he surveyed my office. Simple, functional, notably lacking the status symbols that decorated every Chen Group executive space. Interesting operation you've built here, smaller than I expected. What brings you to Seattle, Brandon? I asked, not taking his bait about office size or decor. I don't recall seeing a meeting request. He settled into the chair across from my desk without waiting for an invitation. Family matters don't require formal scheduling, Liv. I was in Portland for a development project and thought it was time we had a direct conversation about the situation. Which situation specifically? I kept my tone professional despite the presumption in his approach. This unnecessary conflict between your company and the family business, he replied, as if the answer should have been obvious. Dad's ESG division has lost 3 potential clients to Envirotech in the past month. Board members are asking uncomfortable questions about why Michael Chen's daughter is competing directly with Chen Group interests instead of collaborating. The framing was so perfectly Brandon, recasting my independent business success as problematic family disloyalty rather than legitimate professional achievement. The Chen Group was facing market competition, not family betrayal. Envirotech and the Chen Group serve different market needs. I explained calmly. Our platform focuses on substantive waste reduction with measurable environmental impact. The Chen ESG dashboard addresses compliance reporting requirements. Different solutions for different priorities. Brandon's expression hardened. That distinction is creating real problems for Dad. The Chen Group has always been united in market approach. Your separate path is undermining family business cohesion. I declined a partnership when the Chen Group approached us last year, I reminded him. That decision was based on mission alignment, not family politics. Nothing has changed to alter that assessment. Everything has changed, he countered, leaning forward. You're no longer some struggling startup. You've gained market recognition. Legitimate clients. The Wall Street Journal attention created board-level discussions about Chen family business strategy. I noted the shift in his language, from dismissing Envirotech as my recycling app hobby to acknowledging its market position. Success had forced a recognition my family had withheld when I most needed support. I'm glad Envirotech is being taken seriously, I said. But our business model and core values remain the same. We create environmental technology that produces meaningful impact, not compliance theater. That fundamental approach isn't compatible with what the Chen ESG division is building. Brandon's expression shifted to something I rarely saw from him, genuine confusion rather than strategic calculation. This isn't about technology compatibility, Liv. It's about family alignment. Dad's offering an opportunity to bring your company into the Chen Group structure. An acquisition with favorable terms, continued operational independence, but unified. Market positioning. The proposal landed like a stone in still water, not because it was shocking, but because it so perfectly encapsulated the Chen family approach to independent success. Not celebration, not respect for separate achievement, but absorption. Reclaiming the wayward family member by incorporating their success into the approved structure. Envirotech isn't for sale, I said simply, to the Chen Group or anyone else. We're pursuing our own growth trajectory with our existing investors. And board. Brandon stared at me as if I'd suddenly started speaking an incomprehensible language. You'd refuse a Chen Group acquisition? Do you understand what you're turning down? Financial security? Family reconciliation? Dad's recognition of your achievement. The last point revealed everything about his perspective, and my father's. In their world, my success only became legitimate when acknowledged by Chen patriarchal authority. My technology only gained value when incorporated into the family business framework. My independence was a phase to be outgrown, not a permanent state to be respected. I appreciate the consideration, I said, glancing meaningfully at my watch. But Envirotech will remain independent. Our mission and approach need to develop without compromise. Brandon's confusion transformed to anger, his voice lowering to the controlled intensity he used in difficult negotiations. This isn't just about business, Olivia. This is about family healing. Dad sees this acquisition as a path to reconciliation. Your continued refusal is being interpreted as personal rejection, not professional decision-making. The emotional manipulation was so familiar, conflating business choices with family loyalty, using relationship dynamics to override professional boundaries. The Brandon of 3 years ago would have found me vulnerable to this approach. The Olivia who now sat across from him had developed immunity through distance and perspective. My decision is business-focused, I said firmly. Envirotech's mission requires independence from organizations whose primary interest is compliance reporting rather than actual environmental impact. The Chen Group's approach to sustainability fundamentally differs from ours. That's not personal judgment, it's strategic assessment. You can't separate personal and professional in family business, Brandon insisted, the Chen family mantra I'd heard throughout my life. That's not how it works. It's how it works at Envirotech, I countered, standing to signal our time was concluding. I have another meeting scheduled now. Please let Dad know I appreciate the interest, but we're committed to our current path. Brandon remained seated, disbelief evident in his expression. He's not going to accept this response, Liv. This matters to him, not just professionally, but personally. He sees it as your final rejection of family connection. I paused at the door, considering his words. Building different businesses doesn't mean rejecting family. It means respecting that we have different visions and values. Dad equates disagreement with disloyalty. That's his perspective, not an objective reality. Easy philosophical stance when you're not the one dealing with him every day, Brandon muttered, finally standing. This isn't over. He'll approach your investors directly if necessary. The Chen Group has relationships throughout the venture capital community. The threat was intended to unsettle me, to remind me of my father's extensive business connections and influence. 3 years ago, it would have worked. Now, understanding the actual dynamics of my investment relationships, it simply revealed how little Brandon comprehended about Envirotech's position. Jason Kim is fully aligned with our independent growth strategy, I said calmly. Emergence. Ventures invested specifically in our approach to environmental impact. But Dad is welcome to have any conversation he believes might be productive. I escorted Brandon to the elevator, maintaining professional composure despite his increasingly agitated comments about family obligation and short-sighted independence. As the doors closed on his frustrated expression, Sophia appeared beside me. Well, that seemed pleasant, she observed dryly. Family reunion go as expected? Entirely predictable, I confirmed, returning to my office. The Chen Group wants to acquire Envirotech. Apparently, my father sees it as the path to family reconciliation. Sophia followed, closing the door behind her. Translation: your success has become significant enough that he wants to control it rather than dismiss it. Essentially. I settled back at my desk, surprised by my own calm in the face of what would once have been emotionally devastating. Pressure. Brandon seems to think I'd welcome the opportunity to rejoin the family business framework. After everything they've said about your work, your vision? Sophia's indignation on my behalf remained untarnished by time or success. That's not reconciliation, it's appropriation. It's the Chen way, I explained. Individual success is only legitimate when folded back into family advancement. Independence is temporary, acceptable only as a phase before returning to the approved path. And if you don't conform to that expectation? I considered the question, thinking about the family dynamics that had shaped my early life. Then you remain the cautionary tale, the one who could have been part of something meaningful, but chose isolation instead. The failure narrative persists regardless of actual achievement. That's some profound psychological manipulation, Sophia observed. No wonder you moved across the country. I smiled slightly at her assessment. 3,000 miles provides helpful perspective. The following day, I met Aunt Margaret at a quiet cafe near our office. She arrived precisely on time, dressed in the understated elegance that characterized Chen women of her generation. Expensive without being ostentatious, designed to communicate authority without requiring verbal assertion. Olivia, she greeted me with a warmth absent from our previous interactions. Thank you for making time. Your offices are impressive. I passed by on my morning walk. Quite a change from what I imagine your early days looked like. I noticed she'd done her research, understanding Envirotech's growth trajectory from struggling startup to established player. The journey has been educational, I acknowledged, settling across from her. What brings you to Seattle beyond our coffee meeting? Environmental Technology Conference, she replied, surprising me. Some of my investment portfolio companies are exploring sustainability solutions. Your field has become increasingly relevant in unexpected sectors. This was new information, that Aunt Margaret had investment interests separate from the Chen group, that these interests included environmental technology. Throughout my childhood, she had been presented as the loyal lieutenant in my father's business empire, not an independent investor with her own portfolio strategy. The market is certainly evolving, I agreed cautiously, unsure of her actual agenda. Sustainability is shifting from compliance requirement to competitive advantage in most industries. She nodded, studying me with an evaluative gaze I recognized from Chen family business discussions. Your foresight on this market evolution has proven remarkably accurate. The Chen skepticism about environmental technology's business case was clearly misplaced. The direct acknowledgement of my family's error in judgment was unprecedented in my experience with Chen relatives. Admitting mistakes was not a family strength. Being wrong was considered worse than being unsuccessful. Market validation has been gratifying, I said neutrally, still wary of her purpose. Envirotech's approach focuses on measurable impact that improves both environmental outcomes and financial performance. I've reviewed your case studies, she said, surprising me again with her preparation. Particularly impressive is the Westfield implementation. 28% reduction in waste management costs while improving environmental compliance scores by 42%. Compelling metrics by any standard. I waited, sensing there was more to this conversation than casual catch-up or professional acknowledgement. Margaret had always been strategic in her interactions, each conversation carefully calibrated toward specific outcomes. Brandon visited you yesterday, she continued after a brief pause, at your father's direction. Of course she knew about Brandon's surprise appearance. The Chen family information network remained efficient despite geographical distance. He mentioned a potential acquisition offer, I confirmed, keeping my tone professional. Margaret's expression revealed nothing as she sipped her tea. And your response? Envirotech isn't for sale, I said simply. Our mission requires independence to maintain integrity. She set her cup down with precise movement. Your father interpreted that response as personal rejection rather than business strategy. I'm aware of his perspective, I acknowledged, though I disagree with the framing. Margaret studied me for a long moment, her gaze more analytical than judgmental. You've changed, Olivia. The girl who left Boston would have agonized over disappointing family expectations. The woman sitting across from me seems remarkably clear about her boundaries. Her observation was accurate, painfully so. The transformation hadn't happened overnight, but through thousands of small moments of building something meaningful on my own terms, of learning that disapproval didn't equal failure, that family, judgment wasn't the ultimate arbiter of worth. Building Envirotech required learning to trust my own assessments, I explained, including when those assessments differ from family perspectives. Margaret nodded, something close to approval, flickering across her features. That clarity serves you well professionally. I imagine it complicates family relationships. It has created certain tensions, I acknowledged, the understatement almost making me smile despite the serious conversation. Your father won't abandon the acquisition effort easily, she warned. He's presented it to the board as a strategic priority, both for business alignment and family reconciliation. I wasn't surprised by this information, though her willingness to share internal Chen Group discussions was unexpected. My decision won't change regardless of pressure applied. Envirotech's independence is non-negotiable. Margaret's expression shifted subtly, a new calculation evident in her gaze. What if there were a third option, beyond acquisition or continued conflict? This was clearly the actual purpose of our meeting, not reconnection or casual update, but strategic proposition. I'm listening, I said cautiously. A strategic partnership rather than acquisition, she proposed. Envirotech maintains independence, ownership structure, and operational control. The Chen Group gains licensed access to your technology for specific use cases, implemented according to envirotech standards. Limited collaboration without compromise of core principles. The suggestion was more thoughtful than any previous Chen overture, acknowledging envirotech's autonomy while creating a framework for potential cooperation. Not absorption, but actual partnership. "Why are you proposing this?" I asked directly. My father sent Brandon with an acquisition offer, not a partnership framework. Margaret's smile held a hint of the strategic acumen that had made her successful in Boston's competitive business environment. Let's say I have different perspectives on both family dynamics and effective business strategy. The Chen approach to control has limitations in today's collaborative economy. And, she added with unexpected candor, watching my brother attempt to force compliance rather than earn cooperation has become increasingly frustrating. This glimpse of internal Chen family dissent was revelatory. The unified front they presented publicly concealing private disagreements about approach and philosophy. I had always assumed Margaret shared my father's perspective entirely. This conversation suggested otherwise. A partnership would require strict implementation standards, I said, considering the proposition seriously for the first time. Envirotech's technology must create actual environmental impact, not just improve appearance metrics. Reasonable parameter, she nodded. The market is increasingly sophisticated about distinguishing between substantive sustainability and surface compliance. Anyway, both organizations would benefit from meaningful implementation. I studied her, still processing this unexpected alignment with principles my father had consistently dismissed. Does he know you're suggesting this alternative approach? Not yet, she admitted. I wanted to determine if you'd consider the framework before presenting it as an option. Michael responds better to fully formed proposals than exploratory discussions. The assessment of my father's communication style was accurate. He valued solutions over processes, concrete plans over conceptual possibilities. Margaret understood his approach intimately, having navigated it successfully throughout her career. I would need to discuss any potential partnership with my executive team and board, I said carefully. Our investors have specific expectations about Envirotech's growth and independence. Of course, she agreed readily. I'm not asking for commitment today, just openness to considering an alternative to the current impasse. Family relationships and business opportunities needn't be mutually exclusive, despite recent history suggesting otherwise. As our coffee concluded, Margaret handed me her card. Not the standard Chen Group contact information I would have expected, but her personal, consulting firm details. My direct line, she said. For when you've had time to consider the proposition. No pressure, no timeline, just an open channel when you're ready to discuss further. Walking back to the office, I found myself genuinely considering her proposal for the first time. Not because family approval suddenly mattered more than it had yesterday, but because the framework she'd outlined potentially respected Envirotech's core principles while creating space for relationship repair. The Chen Group would gain access to superior environmental technology. Envirotech would extend its market impact. Family tensions might ease without requiring fundamental compromise of values. Whether my father would accept such a balanced approach remained questionable. Control had always been his primary currency. But the possibility itself represented evolution in Chen family dynamics. Up next, you've got two more standout stories, right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.